Hey, what's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Samuel Leggett here representing Team JVS. I am back here again for another movie review. The name of this movie is called Coming to America. Now, Akeem and Sizzy are back. So Arsenio Hall, of course, Eddie Murphy are back in their reprised roles, but this is 30 years later because the first one came out, I think it was like 1988, and I was a baby at that point. But you got newcomers in this one in Lisa Jones, you got Tracy Morgan, you got Wesley Snipes in this one. In addition to that, I think you got Tiana Taylor, you've got Morgan Freeman, and you also have a lot of people from the original. And Louis Anderson is back. Um, you've got Paul Bates is back in this one. John Amos is back. And of course, the amazing King that is, of course, James Earl Jones. So, what did I think about Coming to America? I'm going to be very frank with you guys. I am very intimidated by doing this review because I feel my interpretation of this film from the first one, has been, left to watching it on reruns like on TBS as it concurrently goes yearly and stuff like that. But I felt like I was like, I need to rewatch the first one. So I did. So I'm going to be coming with my own in-depth review of the first one, second to this. So I'm not going to in any way, shape, or form try to make any comparisons other than the obvious in that this one was directed by Craig Brewer, and the original one was directed by John Landis. Now, they did have the same writer from the first one, and Eddie Murphy had, he's got creative credit on it, but I'm not sure if he's a part of the script writing, but I do know that David Seafield, who also was the main screenwriter, he also done like The Nutty Professor and Boomerang. He's been a writer for some of Eddie's great films, or most memorable, I should say. But how did this turnaround go, in my personal opinion? So they have his wife, they have Lisa, she's back, same actress reprises her role in it, and Sherry. And I think that their chemistry is still there. Like they didn't miss a step. Matter of fact, she looks great. Like she's playing the role, but very differently than I would have expected. Because the last time we saw Lisa, she kind of was like, um, in her own world. Like she very much so was independent, strong-willed, but she was also dealing with this dating situation with somebody that was forcing themselves on her and had this own kind of empire with the family business. And her dad really much so wanted her to be not left astray, but wanted her to kind of marry off to this dude. And no, she found Akeem, and even though he lied to her, she found it in her heart that she couldn't escape him. She couldn't leave him, and she ended up finding him where he was, and ended up marrying him. Now, what is the storyline of this? So I just want to go ahead and give you a brief synopsis. The African monarch Akeem learns he has a long lost son in the United States and must return to America to meet the unexpected build relationship with his son. So that that's where things start getting to negatives, but I'm not going to go there just yet. So I'm going to keep on going on the aesthetic. So the fact that now you have this dynamic where you have him now like completely ready to be king and having three daughters of his own, one that's literally like ready and groomed to be the next queen. But from a traditional standpoint, that's not what is allowed. That's not something that is going to be a high value. I find that, the family dynamic in the core of where the characters went is even like the actual immersive aesthetic of how it looks and feels. It definitely does feel reminiscent of that same exact world that was built in the original one. So I'll give it credit there. As well as I think that the costume designers didn't they miss a beat. Like it actually looked more improved. The only thing that I'll say is that where I start to go into negatives is when it comes to the newcomers. So this is Akeem's son. This is played by Jermaine Fowler, and then Leslie Jones plays um, Lavelle, which is Akeem's son, plays his mom. Now, the issue is that I personally feel as though these characters at first glance, when you first intercept them, it kind of feels shoehorned in and it comes out of left field. Like it just does not fit at all. And I think that the character Lavelle, when I first meet him, I don't feel anything for him. I don't really like him. One of the things I can say, and I'm trying not to compare it to the first one, but I don't have a choice in this instance because the first one, when you first meet Akeem, like he kind of is like just nonchalantly just walking around his palace, not a carefree in the world, just kind of really bored and kind of getting ready to get married off. And he's just like, you know what, it's not my vibe. Like I don't really like or love this woman. Like what does that actually mean? And then he goes and decides to go to America on his own volition to meet someone that he feels that he takes value in, that he loves, that he aspires to. And honestly, Akeem as a character was very approachable. Like he didn't just lord over his riches over other people. Matter of fact, it was just weird. Like he wanted to find the roughest spots. Like he wanted to work the roughest jobs. Like he took value in those things and the principles behind them, even though nothing about his upbringing led him to do that. Like he decided to do that. And like with this character, Lavelle, it's kind of like not that he has a chip over his shoulder, but he second guesses himself. Like he doesn't know what his value or his worth is because of his upbringing, because of his circumstance with his dad. And yet he has like a cool uncle in Tracy Morgan, and then a really strong mom in Leslie Jones. I think she plays the role all right. She works for the comic relief side of it, but not until like scenes with Sherry Hidley and Lisa. Like those scenes are the only ones to me that were the funniest. Any scenes with the character Lavelle, I didn't find any of them funny, unfortunately. And I don't think that is a mark on Jermaine Fowler as an actor. I think it's just the way that his character was portrayed. What was more interesting to me is kind of like where they were going to take his character once he had to go back. What was going to be the plot point of making this so different that it is essential to have Akeem need an actual son, which this is where I'm going to have issues when it comes to the plot with this, but I'm going to go and do my best with it because they basically do the same exact story. they literally take it, it's like, we're going to flip-flop this, and it's like, oh, okay, well, a son that he never knew, like is forced to go and do this, and he doesn't want to. He wants to live his own kind of life, and this is completely non-spoilery, but it's literally the same exact story, unfortunately, and it's not even the better interpretation of it because the character Lavelle has a love interest in this one, and I was kind of worried about that because I was like, where are we going with this one? But the love interest situation, I did like Lavelle and this character's chemistry. It just felt shoehorned in where you have a whole multitude of other characters. It's kind of like, do we focus in on Lavelle as a character, as a person, and let him have his own film? Or do we have this focus in on Akeem and where they're at? And I think the problem was they tried to make it a bit of both. I think that the film, if it literally just started, with him as a character and where he was at, and then all of a sudden, like he sees this picture, right? Maybe, and this didn't happen in the film. I'm just painting a picture for you guys. In the film, he kind of sees this picture or whatever, and it's of Akeem, and he asks his mom, like, who is that? And she's like, yeah, that's your dad. Like, he's somewhere I can't reach. And all of a sudden, like Akeem goes on like the news or something like that and sees like maybe like the diplomatic strife and struggle that's going on in this film, and is like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden he goes and tries to find his own heritage, try to find himself, right? And that just starts where it's from that point he goes to the world, and he has to meet his dad, he has to meet his grandfather, he has to meet and see where things are gonna go. Then that would have worked. That's like the focal point was his character to see what does that mean, which that's been done through history. Like, I mean, most films, like they really do that from a generational standpoint. Or, which I feel like should have been the thing, if for a fact the focus wasn't going to be on Lavelle. Instead, I really feel like that with their missed opportunity, in my personal opinion, it should have been on the daughters. The daughters are in their own right so intriguing and interesting to the narrative of this story that they get overlooked. And partly that I have the issue with this is because one of the things I do like about the first one is that in no way, shape, or form did I feel like, this is gonna be hard. I got to tread lightly on how I verbalize this. It doesn't demean any of the women in the first one, other than from the subject, from a what's the word? A suggestive manner, like specifically the scene of the bathing and the catering and all this and that, but more so that bathing scene was just really kind of unnecessary in my personal opinion from the first one. But outside of that, the women that are considered strong, which is Akeem's mom, which is Lisa, are so vastly different that Akeem's mom literally, as the queen, like stood up to her husband, is like, yo, you talking crazy. No, like strong woman and very powerful. And at the same that time, Lisa, like literally taking this man that he was willing to give up his own heritage for her, whether it was blindly or not, he was willing to do it because he felt her worth was valued more than anything else. And he had to learn a lesson because of it. Whereas in this one, these women right here, I feel like specifically with the older daughter, there should have been way more emphasis on her importance of the nation, what she's really doing from a diplomatic standpoint, why she was a threat to the other people around. They use the daughters in a couple different ways in this movie. They put them in a couple fight sequences. They add them to be comedic relief for when Akeem's going through like his trials of becoming the new prince. And outside of that, they don't do anything with them, which to me, I feel like, yes, it adds value to them being like, good people or good children. But at the same time, it just kind of demeans the whole point behind it. And it's kind of like, it's weird because specifically the older daughter, it felt like there was this chip on her shoulders, like, yeah, I want to take this man, Lavelle, out. And they just don't do anything with it. Matter of fact, they actually are like, oh, okay, we'll just, accept, that Lavelle is the rightful this or that. And again, that isn't encompass of where the movie ends up, but the majority of the film is kind of like they don't pay emphasis on these three girls where I think they really could have. Now, what I do think they got really good is the relationship, like I said, with Akeem and Lisa, how it's evolved, how Lisa is consistent, how she's very vastly different, but the same at her core. One thing I'm gonna say, I don't I don't know how to put this. They added in Wesley Snipes in this one. He plays the role of I think it's Commander Iki. I believe that. Oh no, is it Easy? Yeah, or is it Easy? I believe. Yeah. And his character is the general is weird. Like his whole crew is connected in a way from the first one. If you've seen the first one, you would understand the value of his character. But him as a general, it's kind of like he's consistently threatening Akeem most of the film. And it's like, if we remember the Akeem from even just the first few scenes of the original one, Akeem can defend himself just fine. Like, he's not afraid of anybody. Matter of fact, if we go to the scene, which is the most classic one, which this character isn't in there, but Samuel Jackson from the first one, in the way he had to defend himself and everybody in the McDonald's, or I'm sorry, the McDowell's, he's not afraid of a challenge. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. And in no way, shape, or form in this film does Akeem even defend himself. Like, they even have a training moment where he's like fighting with his daughters and stuff like that, but they don't use Eddie Murphy in any capacity to defend anybody. Not even his own kingdom, not even his own daughters, like from an emotional standpoint. And that's one of the things that, as much as I was like, yo, it's dope to have Wesley Snipes in this one, what is the point? What is the real point? Because the way they use him, it's kind of like it's for comedic relief, but then it's kind of like it's not. It's just like, is he out a deeper plot? Is he the antagonist? And he kind of plays a role in both, but then by the end of it, it's kind of like pointless. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it was a waste to me. And I think that at the core of one of the biggest problems that I had is not even so much the way that, Wesley Snipes' kingdom is even built. It's not even that, they have so many random things that they do. Um, with these dance montages or singing montages that kind of to me makes the original kind of pandering. It kind of like it's like, oh, are we trying to be funny here? Are we trying to make this black excellence? What are we actually trying to do? It just doesn't come off good, unfortunately. And again, a big part of it that I had issue with is that they put so much emphasis on the new character Lavelle, but they don't structure him to be the main character. They kind of use him as a side plot that's not merited, or it doesn't feel like it's earned, and it actually goes against what you would perceive that Akeem would do based on how Akeem has led his life up to this point. Now, they do make a point to say that Akeem is trying to be more like his father, and that's the reason why he's making some of the choices that he's making, but the kingdom around him is really, truly crumbling. The biggest thing, too, I would say, is that with Eddie Murphy's character in this one as Akeem, he's unavoidably a lesser shell of his original character, in almost every way to me, because Eddie, to me, doesn't have the funniest scenes in the film. Like, he doesn't have anywhere near the funniest scenes. I feel like there's moments in this film that are just not really that funny. The more I try to recall the funniest moments for me, I think it were Arsenio Hall's moments. And that's weird. It's not even Arsenio Hall as Sissy. It's actually Arsenio Hall as other people. Like when they actually have them going back as, characters they've played before. I think that it gets really funny. But Sizzy and Akeem are not the characters that are funny in this one. Whereas the original one, not only the characters they played were funny, but the characters they played outside of the time were also equally as funny. And again, I don't know. I don't know why or how, because you have pretty much everything there. Like you got the whole cast minus a few that are there at your disposal, but they try to jazz it up in a way that it just doesn't mesh well, and it doesn't add any kind of comedic value. Even with you got Tracy Morgan in this, Tracy Morgan does have a few funny moments. He does save some moments. Leslie Jones definitely has some funny moments, like I said, with the character Lisa. That does save from some of the laughs, but the main core people that are supposed to be funny, even in some of their, classic roles of classic characters, they're only a little funny. But again, I'll say that Arsenio Hall, to me, his funniest character in this one is this random witch doctor that that continues to like spits and like has these weird mannerisms, and I feel like Arsenio Hall legit plays it to a T. It's kind of like it's one of the most unrecognizable characters. Weird, like it wasn't a character we had seen before, but it's a character that I felt was hilarious. Plays it to a T, and every moment that this character's up here, I couldn't stop laughing. Like for real. Even specifically this scene, like even it takes the character like Lavelle that normally wasn't that funny on his own, but actually with connection with this, like it actually was really funny. So what do I level this down to? I think that cinematography wasn't anything special. I think that personally the costume design was good, was comparable, but it didn't elevate anything. I think that they added a lot of big names I haven't even mentioned yet, that do add some shock value. They do some interesting things with classic characters like James Earl Jones' character that I was like really intrigued by and interested in from a nostalgia feel. Like it's good to see some of the characters again, even though the problem with that is that as nostalgic as it is, it's not reminiscent of the value of the characters and why you loved them or what you loved about them. The only one that I can say that stayed consistent personally to what they were before, and it ain't Arsenio Hall's character. It ain't Sissy. To me, it was Lisa. And it's weird because I think that they do something with Lisa that I feel like would make sense for her as a character. But when I think about Akeem, when I think about Sissy, when I think about other characters that are connected in this, some of the new characters work a little bit better. Like Louis Anderson even shows up in here. Oh, I will say who they do use really well, and I want to make sure I pull him up really quick because I did love what they did with his character. I don't know if it's gonna let me. Man, it's not gonna let me. I apologize, you guys. I'm trying to find a picture of him. Man, it's not gonna let me pick it up. It's okay. um, for me, I think that they did a great job with John Amos as Cleo. He has this paternal and fatherly conversation with Akeem that I think was one of the more interesting and sincere conversations that was kind of the turnaround for the film. I just wish it didn't have to, I wish it didn't have to wait for a third act to get to that point. But his character and his character motivations in that specific scene itself really was nice. And it was really nice to, reconnect with his character specifically. And I think that he also took it seriously. I think he took the moment and the situation very seriously, and I think it came off really well in terms of connecting the beats, so to speak, as far as the way that the characters will be scoped. But again, I think that these random like musical moments, I guess, work from attention span standpoint. But everything else, it was not as funny as the original. It was not as nuanced. They didn't do anything to make value of why this should be. And again, partly is because the way that I expressed to you guys that I feel like the narrative should have went one way or another. Either it should have started with, we know this is a coming to America story, but we're going to focus this in on the character Lavelle and processing him out, fleshing him out as a character, maybe different actor or maybe not. I don't know. I think it's just the way that his character was portrayed. They should have positioned a different way. And I think it would have added more value to where it needed to be, as opposed to just trying to make him appear funny. Like, no, let's take it seriously and go move forward. Or we take place in the kingdom and the things that are going on in the kingdom and like just kind of focusing in and honing in on, no, he doesn't have a son. So what does that mean for his kingdom once he is king, and what means for this kingdom with the person that's going to supersede him? Like, what does that mean for his daughters? What does that mean for the people that are around him that look to him? How can he get help? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like, I guess that would mean that there's no point of coming to America situation. But I think it would have been more sensible in the sense of like, okay, now what do you do to preserve, everything in between? And I don't know, maybe it'll be a situation where like Lisa's dad would have stayed home, and like Akeem would have had to gone back and like gotten advice from the dad or trying to figure out how he can be able to, maintain his kingdom or something to that nature. I don't really know, but I feel like it was just designed in a way that, I don't know, it could have been done a little bit different. I think it could have been elevated in a different way. Do I feel like people that looked at the first one should look at this one? I think that for the nostalgia feels and for the characters alone and for the actors to be back and have a willingness to even be back after 30 plus years later, I think it's definitely worth seeing in that regard. But if you've never seen the first one, you should probably look at the first one, then look at this one. And even if you do decide to, after watching the first one, should you watch this one? I mean, I think that you just should take it with a grain of salt that it's not going to meet the expectations that you wanted, nor is it going to have the comedic value of that film or any of the other ones that have preceded it before. I'd rest this at a 5 or maybe a 5.5 out of 10. I do wish it was a lot better, but I will be doing a in-depth review of the first one in just a few minutes. Okay, so y'all guys take care. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace, guys.